Hey guys, welcome back to Powerstroke, boys. It's unfortunately that 200,000 mile time, and it is time to put a water pump in my 7.3 Powerstroke. Now, I've owned this truck for a couple years now. I've never replaced a water pump. I'm believing this is the original OE Motorcraft brand. So I noticed how this water pump was leaking by out of the weep hole, as you guys can see. What a water pump's going out, and every water pump assembly, there's a small hole in the bottom called a weep hole, hence the name weep hole. So when the bearing starts to go, it has a bunch of play. It actually weeps at the bottom of that hole, and this one's actually grinding like a bad alternator. So I'll go ahead and let the truck run. I'll show you guys real quick. Saw the pump starting to walk, and you can see the leak here. Steering dampener, and you guys can see the bottom of the harmonic balancer is wet, and that's a perfect indication that it's right at the weep hole, right in the line coming all the way down. Luckily enough, I have a custom electric fan swap. You guys saw. If you missed it, I got a video, go back, check it. I believe I released it about a year ago, and this truck has electric fans. I don't have to do the miserable thing of taking a air gun or air chisel and beating the clutch fan off. I don't have to take the shroud out. I don't have to take the mechanical fan blade off. 8mm here, 8mm here. And the shroud has two fingers or 2 points that sits in the bottom of the radiator. It's 2 little tabs. Now, but before you do all that, leave the shroud bolted in, take a air chisel, and you want to go ahead and counterclockwise burp it off with a air chisel, a long extension if you guys have it. Get on a 45, dig in that clutch fan really good. It's aluminum. You might gouge it, but it'll be all right. And you guys can take it off. Again, normal rotation, lefty loosey, righty tighty. Need to go ahead and pull the belt off. Need to go ahead and disconnect my temperature switch from my fans. While we're doing all that, I'm gonna go ahead and drain the coolant. And to do that, we're gonna be using a couple 5-gallon buckets. You come up underneath the truck here. Lo and behold, there is a little handy petcock right there. And this is very handy, especially when you guys are dealing with coolant changes, coolant flushes. All right, you guys, went ahead, grabbed a clean bucket, went ahead, degreased it. Now, these petcocks can kind of get stuck in here. Go ahead and just crack this open. And the systems in these trucks hold 8 gallons, so just be mindful. Let's go ahead and get our belt off. The tensioner is right down there. I'll zoom in now for you. You guys will need a 1/2-inch drive breaker bar or a ratchet. Square drive for the 1-inch ratchet on the actual belt tensioner. Hopefully you guys can see that there. Basically just want to finagle that into the hole, no pun intended. And there we go. Pull it counterclockwise toward the passenger side of the truck. And there you go. Pops right out. Part number CP4114. Got this locally. It's like 120 bucks. Got a lifetime warranty. Here is the water neck it comes with for the older style Powerstroke. Here's all your gaskets. Get your thermostat O-ring. You get 2 new mounting bolts. You get an O-ring. And then here's the actual water pump itself. And you guys can see the weep hole I'm actually referring to here, and it's supposed to be nice and tight, just like this guy is. And what's happening is this bearing in mine's failing, and it's allowing the bearing to actually move in and out because it's going out, and that's why it's leaking out of the weep hole. I forgot the specific term, but basically they're for those dog ear type clamps. They grip one side, and when you close them, they collapse, and then it holds it, and then it's got a lock. You let the lock go, and they retract. Right, go ahead, undo your temperature sensor, undo this hose, again using the special pliers. You need to go ahead and undo this lower radiator hose. Got my sensor switch moved out of the way. Lower hose is off. You guys, water pump is ready to come off. We have a bolt there, 2 over here, some down here at the bottom. There we go. Here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10mm bolts. Take a pry bar. Pry against the feed or the front of the oil cooler on the upper inlet for the lower radiator hose, and this will pop right off. You'll have 1 little clip for the wiring harness. Other than that, go ahead and pop that out, and we can get this water. Here's what the noise you guys were hearing. Can you hear that? Yeah, it's not supposed to do that. Got some rust coming out of this thing anyways. It was definitely time. So now we have to pull my temp sensor out. You guys can see how close that gets if you guys are doing electric fans, or then also got to get a thermostat out. I just replaced that about 10 months ago. That's still good. Get our temperature sensor out, get our inlet feed. All right, you guys, if you don't have electric fans, or if you do, you can X and A, or you guys can follow along. This sensor is a 16mm. These are 2 8mm bolts. Here we are using a 19 or 3/4 for the water temp sensor. This is a 1 inch, and this is just a stock Murray 203-degree thermostat. All right, you guys, I went ahead and cleaned up the lower radiator hose inlet, and this is what it looks like after I wire wheeled it. I took my cutting torch, and there's an O-ring that sits here, and it's never been replaced, and it was on there. Tried to peel it with a scribe, wasn't happening, so I took a torch and I heated it up, took the wire wheel again, and now we're good to go. Paint. I'm gonna go ahead and hit this thing with some paint. What I'm gonna go ahead and do is set this down on the side using a 1/4 inch drive ratchet with a 5/16 hex that fits into there. Again, our temperature sensor for my fan is gonna go right in here. If you guys saw when I built my regulator return, I like to use stuff from Permatex. It's the PTFE sealant. It's petroleum resistant and diesel fuel resistant. It holds up the coolant, never had a leak with it. So that's the stuff I'm gonna be using. Also, the water neck inlet for the heater core has a new O-ring, which is this guy right here. That sits in that groove. And then we have 2 O-rings. We have one for the thermostat housing, and then we also have an O-ring for the bottom inlet for the lower radiator hose, which sits around that machined lip, which sits in there just like that. All right, you guys, one complaint is this outlet for the lower radiator hose. So I'm using the original bolts. You guys can see the 2 10mm bolts. I put some NECs on them. You guys can see some light through that right bolt there. And I went ahead and took a hand ratchet and I tried to thread it some more. This side on the left sits flush, where this one has a little bit of a gap. I went ahead and installed the new O-ring. I greased it. And no, it is not this guy. This guy is meant for the thermostat that sits up here in this channel. So it's impossible to get these confused because you guys can see that sits in there, no problem. Also, a lot of people have a leak with these, even using the factory one. They're thin metal. These aluminum ones are nice, but even I've still had some hard time getting this to seal. So what I'll do is I'll put some RTV actually underneath the O-ring, put the O-ring in, then I'll RTV on top of that, then I'll put a dab here, and then it's basically almost foolproof, and you have 3 ways of sealing, where before I've tried to just use the seal and this thing just leaks, doesn't hold pressure. So take your time with that. I just wanted to show you guys about the machining. All right, went ahead and RTV, put the silicone O-ring in there, RTV'd on top of that. Maybe it's a little extreme, but now I'm gonna go ahead and put a little bit on here, put our stainless steel bolts in, again, putting some anti-seize on it, install our O-ring. I'll go ahead. And water pump is basically prepped out. Thermostat, new O-ring, RTV'd, temperature sensor, water temp sensor. Now what we'll do is go ahead and lube up our gasket and put it all the way around. What I did was to get the slack to tuck in, I actually cut a couple of these little nipples off in the corner here, and it tucked down really well. Again, it's just the mesh to hold the O-ring in there. Got our water temp sensor plugged in. Went ahead and put a new zip tie that holds the crank sensor. Got that zip tied right there in that little hole in the casting. All right, you guys, last thing, we had to take the old pulley and install it on the new water pump. There's 4 10mm bolts. Then this thing will slide off, and you guys can really see just how much play. Went ahead and got the water pump pulley back on. Now we just have to put the belt back on, and we are ready to put some coolant in. There it is, belt routing. If you guys need it, I'll show you a schematic right there. Yeah, you're welcome. Everything's connected. And now we're gonna go ahead, start filling it up with coolant. All right, you guys, well, that's a wrap to installing a water pump on your 2002 7.3 Powerstroke. You guys can see we're missing something here. I'm actually in the middle of recording part 5 of swapping 08 axles on my 2002 F250. So make sure you guys subscribe, stay tuned for that. It'll be done this weekend, so I'll probably have the video out Monday, Tuesday this upcoming week. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys in the next video.